Museum Digit
2020.
A Magyar Nemzeti Múzeum online
virtuális konferenciája.
Good day, Museum Digit attendants, and welcome in this talk presented by Susie Anderson and myself, Niels Wouters, both really proud and excited collaborators on the Science Gallery Melbourne project. As you can see, we are based in Australia. We are still going through what seems to be the last part of a lockdown. We're both really excited to go back to the office, I think, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that a bit during our conversation later on. And as you can see from the title, yeah, COVID-19 will permeate, I guess, through our presentation. First of all, before we start our presentation, we want to share this really important and essential message with you as well.
Yeah. Hello, everybody at the conference. It's a shame we can't be there with you today. But as Neil said, my name is Susie, and I am an Aboriginal woman from northwestern Victoria, so the southern part of Australia. And part of our practice when we move throughout the country and when we have gatherings is we do an acknowledgement of country, and that's just part of safe passage through different communities or coming onto land that might not be your own. So right now in Melbourne, Niels and I are both on the lands of the Kulin Nation, the people of the Bunurong. I'm pretty sure that's right, or the Woiwurrung peoples. There's a few different clan groups here in Melbourne. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. And this is just something that we do when we gather or when we have an official meeting to make sure everybody is acknowledged and feeling safe on the land. And this beautiful image that you can see in the presentation, we might go into a little bit more detail about what that is, but that's one of our First Nations projects that was really quite innovative in its approach to using cultural knowledge and bringing it into the Western sciences world.
Thank you, Susie. And for me, being new to Australia, it's really a history and a cultural knowledge that I value more and more each day. And I'm always really happy when one of us or myself acknowledges country. It makes me feel quite proud of being here in this beautiful country with all of its history. As we told at the start, and as Susie mentioned, we are part of the Science Gallery crew. My name is Niels Wouters. I'm head of research at Science Gallery Melbourne. I've been with the team for about 3 or 4 years now. But surprisingly, my background is not at all in museums or galleries. In fact, my background is really in the academic world, where I predominantly research emerging technologies and the social impact of new technologies on public life. But with that sort of academic hat on, I do feel really comfortable in the Science Gallery world and network, and I'm sure that I at times kick up a bit of a fuss and try to, I guess, create new things. Susie, would you like to briefly introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I think it's funny because the team is made up of people who come from various ends of the spectrum, arts workers and scientists alike, and then these amazing hybrid people who seem to be uniquely perfect for Science Gallery. But I'm probably more on the arts end of the spectrum. And I, grew up going to museums and galleries, trotting after my mum and begging her to let us go home. So never really thought I would end up working mostly in the cultural sector. But I studied digital and media communications at university. So I sort of came through the content and storytelling side of things and found my way into jobs at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Sydney, and also the Sydney Opera House, where I made digital content that kind of interpreted exhibitions at the MCA and festivals and events at the Opera House. So I guess my expertise is turning programming into sort of interpretive content or helping people find an entry point using digital storytelling.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there, Susie. And if we talk about innovation, maybe that's one thing where we are quite, not necessarily unique, but different, that we are composed of this hybrid team of people coming from all sorts of angles. And I think that kind of, introduces innovation in a very organic way. And I think sometimes also in a clunky way. I'm, for instance, not always very familiar with the sort of processes and protocols that exists in the world of museums and galleries. But then at the same time, I do feel that we provide each other with a really good framework and really good support to, attempt innovation or attempt to commit innovation, if you want even.
Yeah, well, I think, throwing out the rules in the first place kind of helps you start again. So, and from that blank slate is probably the best place to be truly innovative, if you will.
Totally agree. Now, a bit of background about Science Gallery. Even though we are Science Gallery Melbourne, and we kind of sit a bit on our own in this part of the world, in the Southern Hemisphere, we are part of a global network that commenced really around 2008 in Dublin. Through a Google grant, the first Science Gallery there was initiated as part of Trinity College Dublin. And from there onwards, the network started to gain foot across the world, with currently nodes in Rotterdam, Bengaluru, Venice, London, Detroit, Atlanta as well, which is not on this map, and a new node that will be announced in the next few days. Probably by the time that this presentation is actually online, I suspect that, the 9th node will be officially announced. What's probably quite unique about us is that we always partner with leading universities, and we really bring the arts to the science, I would almost say, and we really help academics understand that what they produce in terms of knowledge is intrinsically creative, or there are really creative opportunities to showcase that knowledge to the outside world. But also the other way around, what we're really keen to do is embed science and embed academic knowledge within the artworks we display or the programs we run. We typically work on a sort of season or theme-based series of programs annually, and we typically source our exhibits through open call procedures, or largely through open call procedures, and then per season we also commission a few bespoke works. I think, again, talking about innovation, this clear link with universities is an obvious one for us to embed innovation in our processes and in how we develop galleries, seasons, and shows. As I said before, we're really about the exploration of art and science. I think the science angle, let's perhaps leave that for what it is. I think that's become clear now through our association with leading universities. But the art angle is a really interesting one, and we're not limited to a specific art form. We're really keen to embed artists in all artistic disciplines in our programs, from the more traditional visual and media arts to art forms that we wouldn't typically consider as part of as an element of art, such as architectural design or even performance. What we're really keen to understand is what happens when art and science collide. I think, Susie, the word collide is not a word we are still using as part of our...
It might be a bit overused. It describes exactly what we do, though. It might be useful to point out that the Science Gallery target audience is also kind of like a demographic that often falls through the cracks or is in between two major groups of people. So in between kids and in between adults, you have this group of 15 to 25-year-olds, and we gave ourselves the challenge of speaking to that audience because they're sort of forgotten about, and the stuff that we do, the kind of tactile, really engaging sort of hands-on style of a science gallery exhibition has that purpose in mind of getting that demographic really excited about being in a gallery space.
That's a really good point. I think a lot of the shows and programs we develop are also quite thought-provoking in nature. We don't really shy away from exploring big themes or societal challenges in a way. In Melbourne, for instance, we've had a season around this idea of perfection and all of the challenges that brings with it. It's really important for us to embed that young target group in our programs, because we really want to get their input on these major problems and major challenges, but also showcase to them what is possible out there in this big world in terms of science, academia, creative practice as well. And for us, indeed, as science and art meet in the gallery, for us, that's really about developing these new ideas, developing research opportunities and innovation opportunities, but also establishing new ways for academics and artists to start collaborating and start experimenting together and philosophize about what, the potential future of this world is going to be about.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate here in Melbourne that we are about to receive the keys in a few months of our new gallery space. I'm very excited by this space. Susie, are you equally excited?
Yeah, mostly just to be in a place that's not my apartment would be super awesome. Obviously today I'm outside. I've been bouncing off the walls in familiar little aquarium, it feels like, so it'd be great to trade up.
Yeah, and it's a project that's now been a few years in the making. I think we've, since I came on board, really, we didn't have a gallery at all. So we've been operating in pop-up mode for quite a few years. But we've been working really hard on the design of this new gallery, as well as the design of, as you can see from this image, the building that sits above our gallery, and really the building that defines, or will define to a large extent, what we are and how we work. Our gallery is located in one of the key areas of the city of Melbourne, so really close to the central business district, but even closer to the university campus, literally across the road from the main University of Melbourne campus. In total, we'll have access to about 4,000 square meters of space spread out over 2 floors. So there's a ground level floor, which is really going to be the main exhibition space, really attracting, hopefully attracting a lot of students and academics working on campus. We also have a basement area that's predominantly focused on teaching and learning. So we have 2 workshop spaces in there, as well as a black box theater, which can serve both as an exhibition space as well as a performance space. You'll see from this image already that we're quite proud of our ceiling, but we might talk about that in one of the next few slides as well. This is an artist's vision of what the future gallery will look like. Now, I'm going to be on site, so in the construction yard, in a few weeks' time. I've seen some photos a few days ago from colleagues on site. It's starting to look and it's starting to resemble what this image portrays at the moment. As you can see, really nice, beautiful ceiling. And the ceiling is really an essential part of the design. We've got this really annoyed and upset feeling about waste after a show, and I think that's probably already one of the areas where we innovate. So we've really decided to have the most flexible gallery setup. So really our main gallery is just an empty space. It's just got a very functional ceiling. as well as, yeah, a nice and operable floor area, I suspect. The ceiling contains a track system, so we can move walls in and out and across the entire space, and set it up or set them up wherever we need them. And we can just keep reusing them for quite some time. We can also add walls if ever we need to. The floor is magnetic, so it's galvanized steel. Apart from mass electrocutions, which we're probably not that excited to do, we can, yeah, attach almost any sort of surface to those tiles. And again, we can build up a bit of a repository of materials that we keep reusing for shows moving forward. The entire gallery space also contains a few social spaces. We've got a cafeteria, we've got spaces for students to hang out, to do some of their work, but also just, have a really fun time in the gallery. If we take you to one of the other gallery spaces on the ground floor, we are quite fortunate to have a 12-meter high gallery space of about 200 square meters, which will really allow us to, maximize the use of space. We can hang massive objects from that ceiling and really engage the audiences both inside and out, through technology, through all sorts of means. Susie, have I mentioned the most essential parts of the gallery, you reckon?
I mean, in terms of the building, definitely, but I suppose the stuff that we've been working on a lot lately is the digital infrastructure of the building. Is that where you want to head to next?
That is indeed where I want to head to.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, I think something that has been foundational to the Science Gallery's new building is creating a space that's alive in a digital sense, because, well, I mean, you can't really build a building in 2020 and not have it kind of networked and on the grid. So some of the ways we've embedded that into the Science Gallery building project are through what we call the Digital Bricks Media Facade. Still working on a better title for that, but this is at the entrance to the gallery, so you can't see it unfortunately in that image. It is a standard brick configuration, but instead of just being like clay, whatever bricks are made of, interspersed there are some glass bricks that are digitally activated. So in the same way that your mobile phone is like a little glass tablet and it's touch enabled, we have 223 glass bricks kind of either side of the entranceway. So as you walk into the gallery space, there'll be visualizations on these screens. And part of the first project that I've been working on since I joined the team earlier this year has been, what story do we tell on these bricks? Because the Melbourne Connect site that our gallery lives in, it used to be the Royal Women's Hospital, which has a long kind of legacy in Melbourne, and as its association with the university and its association kind of from that colonial, first Melbourne buildings point of view. But then it's also really important for us to profile the First Nations, the Aboriginal history of that location. And we've been working with First Nations scientists who have incredible knowledge of plants and the kind of terrain that existed in Carlton and in the CBD. So together with that First Nations knowledge and some great kind of digital content designers, plus the amazing technicians and engineers who have created these digital screens, where we've developed a sequence of visualizations, or it's in the process of development, that will sort of tell this evolving story and really evoke these different periods of time that this site has seen. So really bringing it to life from that point of view.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Susie. I think for me that really is a really beautiful example of innovation. Just that fresh thought that you brought into the team when you joined, and stressed the fact that we need to use this digital, well, I guess, opportunity to showcase the history of the site. And in Australia, very much a history that is not often publicly presented as such, or publicly presented in the way it should be presented. And I think that's really, yeah, what I really, well, one of the things I value about you, that you really fight for that, and you've radically changed how the project has developed from then onwards. Like, we had ideas around how to use these bricks, and we had ideas around showing content that is reflective of the show that is on display inside the gallery. We had ideas around engaging academics and students and letting them develop content. And that's almost an obvious one, I would say, given the fact that we're a gallery and we are connected to the university. But you've added that not, it should be the obvious one, but you've added the one that we neglected, and all of a sudden brought that to the forefront, really.
Well, I think it sort of speaks to what Science Gallery, in my head, it speaks to what Science Gallery's sort of MO is, you know, on at large, which is just asserting the excellence of First Nations knowledges and integrating that into core business, because I think one of the issues globally, not just in Australia, is that a lot of Aboriginal people, knowledge, objects, they exist in this really fraught, tense relationship with galleries and museums. And we know that there are lots of objects far away from the people who they belong to in institutions across the world. So I think Science Gallery, being this blank slate and being really open to innovation, kind of lends itself to this flipping storytelling on its head, and it's able to make itself vulnerable and be open to that storytelling opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. The other digital innovation, I think, is very much COVID related, and I'm conscious that we can't share too many details about that project at this stage, simply because it's still very much in development. In fact, we are still evaluating whether or not the idea is possible. Is it something you want to bring up briefly, Susie, or would you rather not mention it at this stage?
Well, I think it's a salient point for all digital museum workers, or just all museum workers who are kind of having to think digitally now. And I suppose because we had this big idea that everything will be networked and interlinked in the new gallery space, and we've previously done wall labels that are actually tablet based and have a interactive element. We wanted to up the ante for the new building because we didn't have enough challenges. So we kind of brainstormed and thought about what would excite these 15 to 25-year-olds who kind of often just going like this, you know, wherever they go, and that's a phone, obviously. So I think working out how to break them out of that sort of cycle of disengagement and try and speak to them where they are is something that we've been trying to think about with this wall label experience, still in development, as you mentioned. I mean, yeah, I don't know, it seems a bit cheeky not to give some more insight, but...
Well, I think, look, it's probably an opportunity for us to talk next year at Museum Digit, so let's perhaps leave it at that. I think a good starting point is that At Science Gallery Melbourne, we've always used tablets as our exhibit labels, so touch-sensitive devices. And I think, as we all know, also in Europe, this idea of touching surfaces will become very, I guess, challenged in the months, if not years to come. So really, the sort of exercise we went through as a team is, what is the alternative to touching a device that is shared among multiple people? Obviously, you quickly land at people's personal mobile devices, mobile phones. But we were really still keen to explore the relationship between the two, between this public device that becomes more of a passive sort of player, and then the fully interactive personal device. And I think probably where we are quite unique is that, again, we sit within a university, so we've got access to some of the latest innovations. But also, I think what's unique is that we are not afraid to reach out to uncommon partners. People we are working with, for instance, at the moment, are not your common partners in developing a museum experience. Would you agree with that, Susie?
Yeah, because I think we looked across the Melbourne Museum's landscape, or across Australia really, and we've got favourite digital projects and favourite kind of immersive experiences at different galleries and museums here, and there are a few familiar faces, but we decided to challenge ourselves and go with none of those people. So it does bring a fresh perspective to the project, and that kind of twist of experimentation and possibility of failure, which we're not afraid of right now.
And it almost brings us back to the beginning, where we talked about us being this hybrid team of backgrounds and expertise. We are also very much hybrid in how we work with our partners. And indeed, as we just said, we don't shy away from hiring the uncommon partner and just working with them. Yeah.
I should say that I don't want anybody watching this to think that we're developing an app. Because
absolutely.
I think, although I would be curious to anybody watching to know whether that's something that people elsewhere are talking about, because I think, at the MCA, when I came on board, we had an app, and during my time there, we upgraded the app and retired the app. So I saw a whole life cycle, and I think we saw that trend globally. People were retiring museum apps because there wasn't enough uptake, but still there's that desire to reach people on their own device. So finding that balance is something that is key.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that we probably have to almost come to a conclusion, but I think one thing we probably did not talk about in great detail so far is the fact that our gallery, so our future gallery, actually sits within an innovation precinct, or as it's called technically, I think, a knowledge and innovation district. So in that sense, our closest neighbours are, for instance, academics from the Melbourne School of Engineering, from the Faculty of Business and Economics, but also we've got access to industry tenants within the building. We've got access to maker spaces, as that's called these days. As well as startups that are really, innovating within their field. And I think, again, that kind of characterizes who we are, and just the fact that we kind of feel comfortable within such an environment, and will probably seek out the expertise from whoever else is in the building, and also embedding those people within our programs, hoping that they come into the gallery with their visitors, for instance, and explore what we are all about and how their research aligns with what we do.
Yes.
And I think, that being said, I feel like we've come to the end of our talk. I think Susie, I'm more than happy to receive questions from the audience via email or any other way, and I'll find a way to respond. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, I would love to hear about, or have a dialogue with colleagues globally about what that engagement experience looks like digitally for the next year, 18 months or beyond.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for having us present at Museum Digit 2020.
Thank you.
And we hope to catch up with you soon.